how much room I have to move around. Hey, okay, I got plenty. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. I want to just a touch more. And how much headroom is there if I'm sitting up? I can go a touch more. All right, buddy, come here for a sec. Come here. Come here. You are going to be my placeholder for 1 second, all right? Can you come here? Come here. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come here. All right. Can you sit? Sit. Good boy. Stay. 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 I think everybody can hear that. It's awesome. I figured I'd let Oscar do this today. You want to do this today instead of me, buddy? Okay. You don't have to. I tried. I thought maybe you wanted to be the guy today, but you're not very talkative. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday again. I know I said last week it was done, but you know what? I just couldn't not do something. I'm sitting around today, I'm working on stuff, going, you know what? I got to pop something on. I'm all by myself. No Hal, no Tao, no Ernesto. Ernesto's in Argentina, Tao's in Taiwan, and Hal's probably stuck in his drum room doing who knows. Oh, I got to turn this up. What? What I want to do today is I just want to talk to everybody. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about recording. I answer a couple questions that I get quite a bit. I got some questions for you guys. You know, maybe Oscar's going to have some questions. I don't know. Let's just talk about music, recording, why the sky is blue, why is the grass green, unless the grass is brown. Might be some obvious answers there. But I want to start with a couple things. First off, that I get a lot of questions about. And one of them actually is how we do this broadcast. What goes into it, how we're using all the gear, how we're sending headphones around, that sort of thing. Now, first off, everything comes off, as you guys know, you see it every week, the console. And we're using most of the parts of this console, actually, to the point sometimes on the bigger ones we're using every single thing. So the obvious is, let's see if you guys can see this. Make sure you can. All right, cool. The obvious is we're coming in on whatever channels we're using. Today, I've got one channel happening. I'm just got the lav going on channel 1, but some of the big drum ones, you know, we've got a bunch of channels going. Everything comes in from, there's a patch panel in the live room, a 24-channel patch panel in the live room, like a snake. Think of it like a snake that all the XLR cables plug into. That is all routed and comes in. Here, can you guys see this? Down here, I don't know if you can barely see that. I've got, there's 6 patch bays right here, 6 96 input patch bays, or 96 point patch bays. The top row of my first patch bay is the mic inputs, the line ins, and that comes from the live room. We've got 8 line ins in the ISO booth as well, and you can't see it down here, but I'm actually plugged into one of those right now. There's 2 line ins here in the control room, because sometimes you got to do a vocal in here, you know, or like today I'm doing this lav, or Sometimes I'm doing a tambourine or something. I don't want to go sit in there. I just want to set up a mic in here and do it. So all of that stuff comes in on the top first row of the patch bay. The first 24 from the live room goes straight to the console. Then it goes out of the console, the direct outs directly into the Motus, the I/O. And we have all Motu. We've used Motu forever, man. I mean, shit, man, more than 10 years probably. And these are two. We have a pair of 24 I/Os and 2408 Mark IIIs. And I love the Motu stuff. They're great people. It's a great company. They make great gear. It's bulletproof. We've only had a problem one time. We sent it back in 99 bucks later in like 3 days. Bam, we had a brand new replacement. And that's the only time we've ever had an issue. It's great stuff. So it goes right out of the direct outs into the Motu. So we're in Logic, Pro Tools. We're using Logic most of the time unless I have specific clients that want Pro Tools. All the mixes come back up. The console, this is a split and inline console depending on what mode we're in. When I'm in tracking mode, we're splitting the console. We got 24 faders and then I don't know if you can see this, the mini fader is actually a knob. So all the monitoring volumes come off the monitoring section. And that is getting sent to the main output, right? So our faders are going out the direct outs that goes into the computer, and the monitor is what we're actually hearing. Now that, again, here in the patch bay, see if you can see this green cable right here. Hopefully I don't mess with our signal. I'm taking a feed off the master, which is right here. I'm taking that feed and I'm sending it to, right next to it, to my monitor returns. And that's where you can see I've got them soloed right here. So from here, we send it two places. One, I use the auxes, aux 5 and 6, which is a stereo aux. That gets sent to the video computer, which is to my right over here. We have a whole separate rig just for the video. And then I send aux 3 and 4 back into the computer, and I'm recording the actual broadcast. Now, sometimes it comes out okay, and I can just use that broadcast recording, and when we edit some of these clips, I just take that broadcast recording and I use that as my audio, and sometimes I actually remix everything to make sure it's right when we put the excerpts back out. But that's how we're using this. So we're using our faders for the input. We've got the mini faders, which is what our headphone or what you guys are hearing. That's where that's getting mixed. That all gets sent to a monitor return. A feed from the master goes to monitor return 1 and 2, and then I use my aux sends to send to the the video computer and record the broadcast, the actual stereo broadcast, back into Logic. This is the same way we do all the broadcasts. Even like last week we had a Toys for Tots benefit show here, which was great. You guys check out some of that video. 3 really great artists. We have one more video going up tomorrow. But that's big because we're usually running all 24 channels. And then it's the same. I'm pulling the stereo feed, sending to the monitor return, and then we use the auxes to send to the computer for the stereo feed and to the video machine to go out to what you guys see. Now for those shows, I'm also using hardware reverb, or sometimes it's plug-in. Sometimes I've got TC Electronics here that I like a lot. Sometimes I'll use my Lexicon reverbs, and that actually comes up here in the monitor return section. So I can mix on the fly the amount of reverb or the type of reverb even. So I'll have the vocals maybe sending to a couple different styles of reverb. In case somebody has a ballad, then you got a fast tune, you don't really need the same cavernous reverb on your fast song as you do the ballad. So we're mixing a little bit of that stuff on the fly as well. But that's the main setup how we're using the Trident 88. And this makes it easy, really. We can do everything on the fly. I can even do it by myself if I have to, like I am today. Luckily, it's only one track. The other question I got the other day was our headphone system. And headphones, it's gone through a couple different variations and may go through a couple more, or at least one more. But right now, we actually tried out the Behringer PowerPlay. And I don't laugh, everybody thinks Behringer, oh my God, and I do too a lot of the times. However, I gotta say, with their headphone system, it's based on the Avion system. It works really well. We have 16 channel mixers that are out there. Everything is Cat 5, so we can send, basically, in the bottom rack, you can't see it, but the headphone, there's the main system that has some attenuation control, and then Cat 5 cable goes out to the back to the patch panel in the live room, and then all the headphones, everything hooks up via Cat 5 instead of, analog, normal, quarter inch or whatever. And then everybody gets their own mix. There's 16 channels. The sends happen out of Logic. So the way I would set it up is, think of it if I'm on the console, right? You have a channel come in, and every channel has, it comes in, we have our aux sends, like in Logic, Pro Tools, Nuendo, Cubase. Everybody has, your send system. So what I'm doing is I'm using the send system, the auxes, to send to different buses that go out to the live room. So say, for instance, say there's 8 tracks of drums that we've got coming up. Maybe I'm going to pull the kick, snare, and the overheads. And I'm going to send that to aux 1 and 2, stereo aux, in the computer over here. Boom. That's going to send out 25 and 26. So the way we have it set up, I have 40 ins and outs hooked up right now. 1 through 24 is hardwired, or pretty much normaled on the console. 1 in, 1 out. So I don't have to do any patching while we're tracking if I'm going 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, right? If I have channel 1 come in, I have the monitor channel 1 go back out to the mains. The headphone system starts at channel 25, which is 25 through 40. And that is normaled also in the patch bay. So if I send something out channels 25 and 26, it's automatically going to headphone ins 1 and 2. That way I don't have to patch it. I just set my output. So I'll set my aux channel 1 and 2, out 25 and 26. I'll send all my drums to that aux, and they automatically go out there to the room. Boom. They're in the headphone systems, channel 1 and 2, turn it up, turn it down. We do the same for bass, guitar, whatever. And sometimes the drummers want more, so we may have 4 tracks of drums instead of 2. But we have up to 16. One of them is usually going to be the click, and channel 40 is always the talkback channel coming off the console back into there. But that makes it simple during the tracking. I don't have to patch any headphones. I don't have to patch monitoring. Only if I use stuff that is not part of the actual signal chain. So in other words, if I'm using the overstayer pre's, or I'm using the tone lux pre's or something like that, then I have to patch in the patch bay. But otherwise I don't have to. What else on that? Oh, those 25 through 40, all of that is available to me at Mixdown. I just have to patch it where I want it to go. And a lot of the times, if I'm mixing analog, and I do as much as I can, because I just like it. I think it sounds better, yes, but also it's just way more fun for me. I do use plugins, especially for surgical stuff. Plugins are phenomenal. Maybe a little bit of automation in those things. But I may be coming out on a big session. I may have more ultimately than 24 tracks, even if I'm grouping stuff. So I can split this console and have 24 tracks on my faders, 24 on the mini faders. I also have all my monitor returns and effects returns available as well. So that 25 through 40, now I can patch out of those channels in the patch bay and come up on the monitors here, or the monitor returns there. So it's pretty versatile, actually. And it's minimal, I would say minimal patching if I'm tracking. Most of the patching is going to be putting in compressors, or like I said, if I'm using the overstayer pre's or the tone lux pre's, then I have to patch in and out of those. But if I'm staying on the console, it's really simple. We set it up to be simple because we wanted to streamline the initial process as much as possible. And quite frankly, I love the sound of the Trident. I love the EQs, and I use it probably 85% of the time, really. Maybe even 90% of the time on some sessions, except for outboard compressors and whatnot. But that keeps it easy. Also, it's nice mixing. I do have up to 72 inputs during mixdown on the console if I need it. Right now, I'm 40 in and 40 out. That's all that's wired up. We have another 24 getting ready to get wired up as soon as I feel like making 24 more channels of Elko. Not the most fun thing to do in the world, but maybe January, got a little downtime, maybe I'll do it then. But that's a little bit about the console. That's a question I get quite a bit. The headphone system, something I actually got a few times recently, one in the comments and one in the videos, and a few emails about it actually. But so far, I have to say that Behringer PowerPlay, the headphone system, has been pretty darn good. I got to give them credit there. I was fully prepared to get that thing in here and go, nope, shove it right back out the door and get something else. But we gave it a shot, and so far, fingers crossed. If something else changes, I'll let you guys know for sure. We'll do it differently. Headphones, we use mainly Audio-Technicas. We have a lot of HTH or HTM, ATM, the 50s I love, and I have some Sennheiser HD 280s that do a really good job at cupping the ears and blocking stuff out around you. So for bass and stuff, I really like those headphones. A lot of the times I'll give those to the bass player or the drummer because they block out a little bit more and help the bottom end of things a little, especially for bass players that want to hear, you know, some fullness if they're not using in-ears. I use the Sennheisers. Everything else, I really like the Audio-Technicas. They're really accurate, and the headphones are very comfortable. I mean, the HD 280s are too. That's kind of the headphone system set up here and how we're using it with the console and all that stuff. Grab some coffee here, see what's going on. First off, how is everybody doing? First off, I've been talking for 15 minutes, man. Shoot. What else? What else we have here? You know, there is one thing that I kind of want to make. I was talking to someone the other day. I wish I could remember who I was talking to. We were just talking about music and recording and just kind of general talking about technique and that sort of thing. And one thing that I'm really trying to do with the Recording Ninja workshops is I don't want to tell you necessarily how to record. I'm not really interested in that. I don't want to say, oh, you just put it here and this is how you do it, or you put this mic here, or you have to use this type of mic for this. I don't want that because, one, I don't believe it. The thing that I really want to do is show you as many options as I can. Maybe give you an opportunity to hear some stuff that you wouldn't get to hear before. Maybe it is a miking technique. Maybe it's a different size drum. Maybe it's a different guitar amp. Maybe it's, which we haven't done a whole lot of yet, but we're going to get more into that. Or maybe it's different microphone combinations or whatever. You know, I really think that music is really personal, and it should be personal. And you shouldn't be afraid to make some mistakes while you're trying to find what your sound is, or what your sound is at that particular moment. Because, you know, what I like today, a year from now, I might think that I was on drugs and I might hate it completely. Because I think it changes quite a bit, you know, our mood. I know my mood changes how I hear things. You know, so as I've gotten older, I've heard things a lot different too. But something I really got into as I was teaching, you know, I've taught for a long time in different areas of the business. Let me start over with this so I don't ramble on here. First off, this has been, let me start a little in the beginning. This whole music thing, every bit of it, for me, started really, really early. I knew, I was 9 or 10, that this was what I was going to do. I didn't know exactly, you know, I thought it was going to be something different then, but I knew music was my thing. Somehow, you know, it was 83, I think, when Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil came out, and we were on family vacation in St. Louis. I was 8, 9, or 10, and I talked my mom into letting me buy Shout at the Devil. Now, don't ask me how I talked my mom into letting me buy Shout at the Devil, and don't ask me why we were on family vacation in St. Louis. We were. So we were there. Maybe that's why I needed a new record. But that first song, you know, the whole intro comes in. It's like, in the beginning, all this stuff. And then the song kicks in, with the guitar. And then Tommy does, boom, boom, ga-um. And instantly, man, I was in the back of the family van going, yeah. I knew I was hooked. And it started then, and it's never stopped from there. So many years later, I've gone to a couple of music schools. I went to McNally Smith in Minnesota, which was called Music Tech at the time, in the Twin Cities, great place. Then I came out here and I went to Musicians Institute, where I also taught for almost 20 years. And it took me a while to figure out kind of how to help people with, whether it was playing drums, whether it was writing songs, whether it's this thing, how to help people discover their sound or their way of playing or whatever. Because for a while it was just like, oh, here's a technique and do it, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do this, and this is how you do this. And none of that, I don't think that's right, really. And it took me kind of maturing to realize that everybody's journey is different, and it should be different. Otherwise, things would be really, really boring. and it get really boring really fast, which honestly, you kind of hear that now with some of how everything's been made so perfect that I don't think we connect quite the same to it. But through that time, even through my last couple years at MI, before I left there, I really cared more about how everybody else heard things and tried to help them hear stuff different in their playing, different in their sound, different in the groove, whatever. And that's the same thing I want to do here. I want to try to help open your eyes. I want to have a conversation with you guys. There is no way that any of us can ever know everything. And there's no way that we're all going to agree. You're not always going to like the sound I'm getting. I'm not always going to like the sound I'm getting. It's an ongoing process, but the whole point is to explore. And for me, with what we're doing here with all of this stuff is really to show you different ways of doing things. Maybe spark something up here for you to go exploring, or maybe help pull you out of a rut. Or maybe you're just starting out and you do need some actual, hey, try this first, try this first. You do need some of those kind of that guidance. That's what I want to do, man. I want to hear, really what I'm interested is I want to hear what you guys are doing, because I want to hear what you're hearing. I want to hear what your personal aesthetic is. Mine changes all the time. Mine changes band to band, sometimes song to song, even inside the same band. Because I feel my job as an engineer and producer is to help the artist get their sound, which is kind of what we're doing with the Recording Ninja workshops. And that's why I really want your feedback, is I want to know what you want to know or what you need help with, so we can go that direction and try to come up with some ways to give you those things. Because that means your success means a lot to me, especially if we're all doing this thing together. We've had some great conversations going in the comments these last few weeks, which has been phenomenal. We've got some cool stuff coming up in the new year that I think you guys are really going to dig. So I'm looking forward to it. A lot, actually, what we have going on. But I'm hoping to really, it's more of a inspiration thing, or get a light bulb to go off and have you go, oh, that gives me an idea. I got this one song, I go do that, And that's what it's about. This should be a journey. This should be a constant exploration, of sound, of writing, of playing, whatever your instrument may be, Let's see what we got going on here. We got a few people joining us today. I know I said last week was going to be it, but like I said, I was sitting around doing some stuff today, and I need a break. I want to go live. What other questions have I got recently that there were a few of them? Oh, you know what? There is a couple pieces of gear that we haven't used. We haven't got too much into a lot of actual gear use through the show. Most of it stayed on the Trident. We have done the 400, our great gear under 400. We used some of that stuff, which was cool. But there's a piece of gear that I had someone ask me recently about, and that's the overstayer equipment. This is made by a guy, I don't know if you can see this right here. Let me get this thing out of the way a little bit. These are I have a couple mic pre's of his, as well as his VCA compressor. And this is made by Jeff Terzo. This stuff is, here, you know what? I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in on this. I'm by myself today, so I'm my own cameraman. Let's get in there. Boom. Right there. These things are kind of cool. They're made by Overstayer, which is a guy named Jeff Terzo, who makes fantastic gear, man. This is a really cool pre, because there's some different things you can do. It has a Pultec style EQ, the way it works. It has, your input and output attenuation. There is a transformer in there. It's kind of based, don't quote me on this, but I want to say Jeff at some point was really kind of into the EMI kind of thing. But what's kind of neat about this is you can use it to where you can crank the input and do your normal kind of, saturation, and then control your output attenuation here. But it has this gain only function over here, which allows you to use it on the input only, so your output doesn't do anything. So it's more kind of API style. I almost always have that engaged because I like to push things as hard as I can. The other thing it has that's really neat is it has a little bit of, you can do second and third harmonic distortion. If you engage this, you can have your second harmonic or your third harmonic. And that is dependent on how hard you drive this input right here, how hard you're going to drive it into that saturation. Like I said, Pultec style EQ, you got 30, 60, and 100 on the bottom. This I had Jeff kind of make me a little extra something, something here. It's not labeled, but this is a 60 hertz bump. Great for kick drums because it's pretty sharp. So if this is too wide, you just kick that sucker on and boom, you've got it. And then you can actually put the EQ in or take it completely out of the circuit. This is a really cool piece of gear. It's really big and huge sounding. Let me go back out here. Sorry if I'm making anybody sick. I'm my own camera guy today. But that's a fun piece of gear. I love it. Kicks and snares, man, it makes things just really big and wide. The EQ is nice, especially the top end, the 12K on that thing. You can crank it and it just opens things up really nice. That's a good piece of gear. I think it's overstayer.net is the website. Jeff Terzo, he's a local guy here in LA making some really bitchin' gear. You know, my boys at Trident, you know that. Love that. TridentAudioDevelopments.com. They have a new website up with some cool stuff on there and a history of Trident, actually, going back to the beginning, running through the A range, the 80Bs, the Cs, all that stuff. There's a really neat history of Trident Studios in the console there. So go to TridentAudioDevelopments.com and you can see that there. What else do we got that I'm really digging? You know I love the Joe Meek. Oh, probably my favorite two compressors right now, or have been for a while, are these Tonelux TX5Cs. I love these things. You can hit it really hard, like all the lights coming on, and it has the uncanny ability to not completely kill and squash your transient. It's amazing. It can be smooth, it can be really exciting as well, depending on how hard you want to hit it. Very cool compressor. Matter of fact, a lot of my mixing that I've been doing this last couple weeks, I'm going Tonelux and I'm feeding my Allen Smart C1, which those are probably my two mix-wise that I'm really digging the most right now. And it's a good combo, really nice combo between those two. And they're both just doing a little bit of work. I'm not necessarily hitting one harder over the other. It's just a couple dB here and a couple dB here, but they have the mid-range in these two is different and they complement each other well, where they kind of make things stick out. I tried a lot of combos. I tried it with the Rupert Neve, the Portico here, the 5043, and that was cool, but there was something about the Tonelux and the Smart Research C1 that I was just like, man, that's a pretty cool combo. So I kind of stuck with that. But anyway, what else? What else is in the studio? I mean, there's a million things. You guys have any questions? Got a conversation? Let me know. Let's talk. See if anybody's around. Holy crap! What's going on here? I did not see everybody. Give me a second. I gotta look through here. Who's here? Jared, awesome. Welcome. Good to see you. Spink, good to see you. I've been debating getting a Pro VLA for a while. Do it. Man, don't hesitate. Pull the trigger. These things are, can you see that right here? Is it down here? I can't tell in the, oh yeah, you can see them. Like I said, I have two of them. I have one that's original, the same as they sent it to me, and I have one that I recapped and put some different tubes in. I don't remember what I put in. That'll be something we'll do in one of the broadcasts next year. So I'm gonna pull that out of the rack and we'll actually do a tube swap and we'll see how big a difference it makes. Put it on some overheads or a room, or actually an acoustic guitar is a great way to tell also. But man, you can't go wrong with those things. You really can't. First question, how do I make drums sound good in a basement? I can't get control of the room. Mark, give me some room size. What's your room size like? Warming up in Australia. What's up, Perry? I know someone else said it was warm down there too, man. It's been nice here in LA. I gotta say, it's getting in the 50s at night. I could go for a few degrees colder. I'm a cold weather guy, but I'm digging it. There's an error. Uh-oh, Jared, what we got going? What's the error, man? Hopefully it's not on my end. If it is, yell at me. Firstly, fantastic. Sphinx, thank you, sir. Have you tried the weather vane drum technique? Might be a cool session demo. No, I haven't, actually. You know what? I'm going to look into that. Weather Caspers. You know what? Let me do a little, I've heard of that. Let me do a little research on that, and I'll get back to you. Jared, don't quit your job yet, man. We'll get together one of these days. That's awesome, though. I can't have... Mark, what do you feel silly? What can't you afford? Hey, listen, man, I firmly believe that just because something has a big price tag doesn't mean it's better. Really doesn't. I mean, $2.99 on these Joe Meeks. I use them on every single recording and mix. Every one. They don't miss one. I don't use the Rupert Neve on everything. It gets used a lot, but not on everything. Joe Meek, I use on everything. Pro VLA on everything. Then yes, they got the Overstayer, which is, I want to say that's 15 or 1600. That gets used a lot. It's great. Day King gets used. The C1. But the Pro VLAs are $2.99 for stereo. Don't let a price tag stop you. Matter of fact, before I read through the rest of this, we'll get to all this stuff. Man, I'm sorry I didn't see this stuff. I'm over here blabbing away as usual and didn't see it. My old studio that I used to have in Hollywood was smaller than my control room. This is 305 square feet, my control room. My old studio, and I need to I was talking to Barry Rudolph yesterday about this, about the whole meters and the metric system. I did some demo stuff with him on this new ribbon mic, but it was 280, I think 280 or 283 square feet at my old studio. And we tracked live bands in there all the time. That's how I learned to do all this stuff in this small, really I had 13-foot ceilings, but it was a box. It was a crappy room. We got great tones in there. But I had my neighbor at the studio was this guy named Michael Patterson. Go look him up. Michael Patterson. Patterson, I believe. Really awesome engineer. Really awesome. He's mixed a lot of Nine Inch Nails stuff. He's done a bunch of movie work. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I don't know why those are the only things that come to mind. His resume is huge. Really great guy. Used to pop in my studio because we shared a wall, and I'd go in and bug him with questions all the time. And every once in a while, he'd just pop his head in. I'd look up, and there's his head sticking through my door. And he goes, "Hey, man, have you ever tried using that compressor on sidechain?" And all I had at that time, I had one Alesis 3636. Hey, there's another one. $50. I use that thing a lot on drums. I still have it. But at the time, that's all I had. And I looked at him and I go, "It's just this crappy Alesis." He goes, "So? Use it. If you have it, use it." And he came in, he showed me how to hook it up to do the parallel compression. I go, "Man, but this is like $50. He goes, "Who cares? Try it. If you like it, use it. Who gives a shit?" Of course I did. It worked out really well. And there was my beginning of my parallel compression experience. Was all him just, I don't care. It's crappy compressor. And he came in and actually showed me how to hook it up and do it. And actually, he borrowed my Pro VLAs, checked them out one time because he wanted to get some of those. This was many years ago. But my point is, the price tag does not mean it's going to be better. A lot of the times, the build quality might be better, and there are times where things are just magical, and you get that expensive piece of gear and you pull it on and it's great. But I've seen just as many stories of the vaunted Fairchild, which I would love to own. I actually think I saw something with Ronan, a post that Ronan Chris Murphy did a while back where he's working at, I can't remember what studio and where it was, but they had a Fairchild, and they're like, "Oh, we got to try this on," whatever it was, their rooms, their vocal. And he said in the end, they ended up going back to, it was a distressor or something else because this, thousands and thousands of dollar compressor that everybody wants didn't work for that track. So don't think that you got to go spend a lot of money to get great stuff. Don't feel silly. Go buy it. Buy whatever you can and learn to use it, man. If you don't like it, you can always sell it and buy something else. And every once in a while, you run into those gyms that you've got something cheap for $100, $200, and it stays in your rack forever. Don't be afraid to do that. All right, let me keep going down here, man. I want to get, holy crap. I'm going to have to power read. What's next? Kenneth, do I use samples for drums? Sometimes, but not very often. Actually, it's really rare. Sometimes when I'm mixing somebody else's material and maybe the drums aren't recorded right for the sound they wanted, they went in and they got a drum sound, but they weren't thinking about the song and what they needed, I'll augment my sound with samples then. I'm not necessarily against them. If it's something I've recorded, I would say 98% of the time I won't use a sample. We won't need it because we'll have had pre-production, we'll have talked in length with the artist, the band, or whoever about the sound they're going for, and we'll try to get as close to that on the tracking day as possible. And I always usually set up a few extra mics here and there so we do have, I anticipate there being some changes later down in the process. So I try to anticipate that as much as I can. But, you know, if I need it, if we get there and we just go, man, that snare's not fat enough for the track. Our production went a little bit this direction instead of this way, and EQ isn't doing it, or EQ is making it muddy or making it not sound good, I'll go through one of my samples, find something with some body, and I'll just tuck it up. But I couldn't tell you the last time I've actually sound replaced something. Jesus, I don't remember when it was. So I try mostly as, it's kind of a personal thing. I just want to try to do it without samples. But at the end of the day, the music, the song is what is king. And I have to, you know, listen to that and do what's right. But I would say not too often. Videos are great. My weakest link drum recording wise. Thing missing is an Abbey Road live room. Now that's a big, you went right for one of the big live rooms there, Casper. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to have one of those? But there's something about the room that I have, which is about just shy of 600 square feet, where it's not dead and it's not really live. It kind of sits in between, so I can make it dead and make it sound smaller, or I can make it sound bigger with a little creative use of some compression. And that's on purpose. But my weakest link, let me think about that for a second. Because I know during sessions every once in a while I run into something and go, man, I wish, you know, I can tell you one thing I wish I had. And this is something that's going to be built at some point. Off the back room, we've always planned another ISO booth that's big enough to put a drum set in so we can do like that tight 70s thing. But I want to make it so my panels are reversible. So I can make the entire room reflective and use it almost like a small reverb chamber to where it's really, really live. That's something I wish I had somewhere in here, like, you know, the stairwell that they use with Led Zeppelin, you know, that thing where you could stick the mic and it's just basically a reverb. You know, we're working on that here, but that's something I wish I had. Maybe one of these days. Spink, what we got here? I love the subtle differences. Oh, man, you guys, man, these are some great things, everybody. Do me a favor. YouTube does not allow me to save these comments at the end of the broadcast. I try to take screenshots of this stuff and archive it so I can go back through them and find, like, the questions and things to cover. But if you guys would do me a huge favor, go to recordingninjaworkshops.com, which is part of the Ultimate Studios Inc. site. At the bottom of that page, there is a form that I have to fill out with questions. You know, write in this stuff, because these are, man, this stuff is great. The subtle differences in gear, but more and more workflow and getting the engineering side of things out of the way seems to be more and more important with wait, let me read that again, Spink. I love the subtle differences in gear, but more and more workflow and getting the engineering side of things out of the way seems to be more and more important with creating. So are you asking me here, just want to make sure I'm understanding you, are you interested in more of how the workflow of stuff is, as opposed to just going through, you know, because we have a lot of the workflow done when we get to these, and we're just going back through the settings. Am I understanding you correctly there, Spink? Spink 24. Maurice, thank you. Man, I have nothing to hide. Most everything I know I took from somebody else anyway. I just try to group it all together and give it back to you guys as much as I possibly can. And I'm a geek, man. I do this every day, all day. I love it. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Mark, how about recording drums right into the I.O. and using plugins only to mix? Well, you can't go right in the I.O. Well, okay, wait a second. Okay, Mark, I'm answering one of yours questions there. You know what we're going to do one of these times is I have a live recording. We do mobile recording here too. And we have it's based around 2 Motu 8 pre's, and we plug in 2 other units depending on how many channels we need. We can go up to 32. We're going to do one with that because there will be no way for me to use EQ, the board, or anything. So we're going to do one with that and do something that's plug-in based. That's a really good, that's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And Mark, now that I see you post that there, I'm going to put that in the queue as soon as possible. Spink overstare, you know it. Dylan, I'm going to be the engineer for my dad's punk band. Nice! I'm going for a punk sound. Is this a mic choice you want? Man, I would use, honestly, if I was doing a punk thing, I'd probably have a lot of dynamic stuff, man. I wouldn't use any of the nice open sounding microphones. You only have 8 inputs. How many people in the band? What's the setup? Is it drums, bass, guitar, vocals? What's the setup there? Oh, Dylan, right next to it. Actually, 10, but 2 are 1/4 inch. So you have 10 mic pre's to work with. I'd go maybe 5 of them on the drums, 6 of them on the drums, depending on how many guitars and vocals you have. If it's just one bass, take one of those in the 1/4 inch. You know, the guitars, you could mic up with 57s. The drums, you could go like a kick snare. You could hang a mic over the kick and the snare and slap that sucker with compression. Man, make it kind of blow up to where even the cymbals blow up, and you mix it in, it'll be kind of dirty and gritty sounding. The same thing you can do with the overheads. And I've actually used, sometimes if I want things to be gritty, matter of fact, I need to post a link to this. We did, back in the full-on drums days, which hopefully we'll do something again with that soon, we did an episode with only SM57s. The overheads, the rooms, hi-hat, snare, everything. And it was kind of gritty sounding. So use, a 57, a PR30, a 421, whatever you have that's maybe some dynamic style mics that isn't going to be nice and open. It's not going to have this beautiful cymbal sounds and get trashy. I love the Cube for that reason. The MXL Cube is a condenser, but if you put that a few feet away from the drum and hit it with compression, it can get really gritty and dirty kind of sounding, which is cool. But I go maybe 5 or so on the kick, or I'm sorry, on the kit. Maybe 1 on the bass, couple on the guitars, and leave some room for vocals. I do covers on YouTube and record in Logic Pro X. Yeah! I was wondering what are some good methods to record lead and rhythm guitar. Jonas, are you talking about after the fact? You've already recorded your covers, or is this just separate from it? Lead guitar stuff, a lot of the times, and it depends on the guitar player, but I'm going to probably have something where I can drive the gain a little bit more, so when they're doing their solos, they really feel the strings and they get that instant interaction with the amp when they're playing. And I'm quite often going to have a blend of a couple mics. Usually I'm going to have a dynamic and a ribbon is kind of my starting go-to. 57 and a lot of times I'll use one of my Cascades, or I use a PR30 in a Cascade sometimes. And I'm going to use that dynamic for, well, I'm going to generalize here, so please don't hold me to this as the only way to do it. But for instance, one way in getting lead tones is I take that, say a 57, I go directly in the center of the cone, and then I just slightly, if this is the center of the cone, I just slightly go this way in and out until I find a spot that has enough of what pokes through, but it's not too shrill maybe. And then maybe I'll take that ribbon mic or even another 57 and I'll go on the outside of the speaker where I'm just getting the body of it, and I'll just bring that in enough to where it's not a thin sound. Now, if I'm doing rhythm guitars, I may use more of that second mic than I would the mic in the middle, where say I have a ribbon on the edge of the dust cone. If my nose is the dust cone and I just take that mic a little to the outside of the dust cone, I may use more of this. And that dynamic that I have in the center, I may just blend in until I get the amount of like presence or cut that I need. But that's a couple. We did one guitar thing. That's something we're going to do more of. I'm bringing in some more guitar players to do some stuff with me. And I'm going to get my partner Ernesto actually to join me on some, because he's got a great ear for guitar tones. Oh, what else we have? Jonas, I hope that answered a little bit of your question. Maurice, what state am I located in? Am I an independent engineer? Yes, I am. I have the studio, obviously, Ultimate Studios Inc., where I produce, mix, record a lot of stuff, but I am a freelancing engineer too. I'll work anywhere. I just want to make music. And I'm in California. I'm in LA. Actually, we're in the Valley, so I'm basically on the edge of North Hollywood. Pretty much have rhythm guitars panned right and lead slightly panned left or right and double tracked in the center. Double tracking leads can be really cool because it's the same concept as double tracking a vocal. You can get things to be really thick and cut through a mix without having to do a lot of extra processing. Rhythm guitars tend to be panned out hard right, hard left, yeah. The double tracked in the center or a little pan, that's something, man, we could go ask 15 engineers there on this and they'll have a different thing. What I tend to do, let's say I have two, like say it's a vocal or a lead guitar or anything, I will most of the time, if I'm just doing a double, like for thickness, I keep them on top of each other and I use my volume as a blend. If I have different mics on those amps, then my double, I may use the opposite setup. So say maybe the one I'm using as my main lead has more of my dynamic cut mic and only a little bit of my secondary filler mic or beef mic. Then my blend, I might do the opposite on. Or I might only use one of those mics and just pull it up underneath it directly in the center until it comes out the way I want it. If I want things to start taking up a little more, say you're getting to a chorus or you have the big part of the lead, I may actually triple record something, a vocal or a guitar, and keep one in the center and pan two just a little bit out. Not hard out, but just so your sound starts to, instead of feeling mono, it starts to feel like it's taking up a sense of space. And that's a really good trick you can do even with vocals, like getting to choruses and making things feel bigger and opening up, is do something 2, 3, or 4 times and just pan them out just a little bit, or pan them out a lot and really spread it out. And you can make things sound really big that way. But rhythm good stuff tends to get, you know, the Bob Clearmountain treatment. It goes out, you know, hard left and hard right. Can it screw samples? I would say I agree with that most of the time, you know. But there's those moments you kind of need to use them. Julian, what's up, dude? Live shows, hangs are great. Just wanted to wish, man, Merry Christmas to you too. Everybody, happy holidays. Please be safe. I want to see everybody again in the new year. You know what? I want to hear what you guys are doing. There's a lot of you here, and I know you guys are recording something. You're making videos. You've got your bands. You're putting out singles, EPs, or whatever. Share that stuff with everybody. And that's something that we're going to start right away in January. Let's get some back and forth going on, man. I want to highlight some of you guys, man, and see what's going on. Maurice, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. You mentioned plugins. What are a couple of go-to? Okay, boy, this is actually pretty simple. My go-to most used plugins have all the wave stuff. You know, you open it up and the list is, you know, it's a scroll this long, and I use about this many of them. I use a lot of the Logic ones, stock in Logic. I really like the Logic compressor. It really sounds good, and there's a lot of options. I use the channel EQ a lot. Probably one that I use a lot that most people don't think of is the expander. And I use 2 different ones. I like the Logic expander a lot. I also like the expander on the Waves SSL channel strip. And matter of fact, I was just telling an old assistant of mine who's in Texas making some great music, Federico, he was asking me today, was having a problem with some snare bleeds. He said he had a drummer or either the drummer was hitting the hi-hats too much, or he said whoever recorded it didn't do a very good job of miking it, and there was so much hi-hat and cymbals. So I said, hey, have you tried an expander? And he goes, man, I've never used one. So I said, he was using Pro Tools. I said, Pro Tools has a built-in expander plug-in, but if you have the Waves one, the SSL one is fantastic. Because what it does is the opposite of a compressor. It's not the sound, not hitting a threshold and coming down. It's actually letting stuff go above the threshold. So say we want the snare to come out because it's loud, but we want all the noise around it to come down. That's what that expander will help do. It's great on toms also if you want to clean up the ring, but you don't want to do mute automation, or you don't want to go in and cut everything out. You know, you want to leave a little, you can use an expander because all that residual ring, sympathetic ring, will just get softer, but the notes will still come out. And like a compressor, there is an attack and a release that you can adjust so you can how fast it's going to hit and how long it will stay open at the end of the note. So the expander is one of my favorites. I really like the Waves, the CL76, the blue stripe. I use that a ton. I love the Lexicon reverbs. I know there's a ton of reverb plugins, and you know, there's the Valhalla, you've got the Altiverb, and you've got some other great ones, but somehow 9 out of 10 times I'm using one of the Lexicons. They just always work every freaking time. I'm seeing myself in the playback and I'm like, ah! I kind of talk with my hands a lot, plug-in wise. That's it. The Though I know I like the Logic compressor. I really like the CLA 76. The CLA 2A also I like a lot. I do like the Waves, the SSL channel strip plug-in. That one gets used quite a bit. I do use the X-Hum every once in a while if I get some noisy guitars or you get some, ground looping going on, which is inevitable. That works really well. Let me think. I know there's a couple more I was just telling somebody about. Let me think on that, and I'll come back to it. What else? Miking cymbals from underneath. Most of the time, I would say, if I'm going to generalize, not a huge fan. However, Greg Wells, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. If you've seen any of his stuff, I know he's got a smaller room, I think lower ceilings, and they mic their cymbals from underneath a lot of times, and I think his stuff sounds pretty good. So right there would tell me that I obviously like it. Now, in my own practice, not so much. The one time I probably do it, and I did this on the Toys for Tots benefit last week, is the ride cymbal. Sometimes we'll mic it from underneath. Because most of the time, if I need a ride mic, it's because I need a little extra presence or attack. And maybe just because of other cymbals, that, the rides here, maybe cymbals are placed funny, or a drummer has it in a place that it's just not practical to stick a mic there, or it just fights with phase on the overhead so bad, I'll put it underneath. That also means that mic won't get so much of the other cymbals. But then you got to make sure to check your phase, because you have overheads pointing down and you have a mic from underneath pointing up, kind of like a snare drum, right? You got to check that to make sure that those mics are in phase, and so be diligent with flipping your phase. But I would say most of the times I don't mic from underneath. But like I said, man, I hear Greg Wells stuff. It sounds great, so maybe I should try it more often. Forgot to mention I have a line-in jack on the back of the amp. Logic Pro, I can hear more of the guitar track. Yeah, another thing that you could do, Jonas, with the line input is you could reamp. And this might allow you to actually have a little more control over dialing in your tone, especially if you want things to be gritty and not nice and clean. Is that with that, if you get a clean line in from the amp going straight into Logic, you could then, once the recording's done, send that back out to the amp and mic your amp up and take some time dialing in your tones. That's something else you could do. That's a really cool thing, because that'll allow you also to maybe to hear it a little bit better, like you're saying here. We're going to do some amp miking stuff, actually, because there's some cool things, and we're going to get into some different, everything so far has been kind of clean. It's like getting started, a lot of basic techniques and things that I use a lot, but we're going to get crazy. I'm going to try some different stuff. Luis, when I record my guitars, they have been harsh lately. Harshness, move that, this is a lot, two things that you can start. I'd need to hear it would be a lot easier for me to tell. The obvious is what you said, moving it off. If my nose is the center of the dust cone, keep going out towards the side. If it gets out past the dust cone, a lot of the times that mic on its own might be a little too dirty. Now that E609 is a great mic, but one thing you could do is you could get to the edge of the dust cone and then angle the mic back towards the middle, because you're not going to have the direct sound hitting that mic as much, so it won't be as harsh. But you'll get some of the brightness back while at the same time getting some of the outside of the speaker, the little more warmth and body. The other thing is you could think of, if that's say that's your grill or speaker, this relationship, how close the mic is to the amp. When you're right up on it, man, it's like getting on a snare, man. It's just getting pounded. But as you start to move it away, you start to get more of the overall tone of the speaker. Like if I have a mic here, it's really getting the sound from there, right? But if I put a mic back here this far away, it's not just getting the sound from here, it's getting more of the overall sound of the speaker, right? Kind of the same thing on a drum set, that if you put a mic right on a snare, it's getting that sound, like your ear is there. But as you move away from that, you start hearing more of the space of it. Try that too. First off, maybe go out a little more, again, center of the cone, go out just maybe at the edge of the dust cone or tiny bit past, and then angle the mic back in a little bit. And then start to go like the proximity of how close you are to the grill or the speaker. And start there first and see how that goes. Thumbs up, sharing local music. Man, local, we got to share the local music. Wherever you guys are, go support it. Without each other, without us supporting it, if we don't care, who else is going to care? And there's a lot of great music out there, man. That's one thing I like about having the studio and doing the concerts is I get to meet a lot of great musicians. Last week's Toys for Tots benefit, I only knew one band, Little Empire. They were fantastic, but Cage 9, Robbery Inc., my first time hearing and meeting those guys, blew me away. Great people, great music. Maurice, freelance engineer in Miami. What's happening in Miami? I do live sound and recording for church, jazz, hip-hop, currently using a Focusrite setup and upgrading to a digital console next year. Ooh, which console you're looking at? I've kind of been thinking that myself. I tend, as you know, I like faders, man. I like my hands to be able to be on things and mixing. But cool. It's also another way to drive your recording business is get out and meet new people. Let's see, TKM, check out Samurai Shotgun. What's up? I'll check out Samurai Shotgun. You got some questions, feel free to ask them. Spink, I love the SSL expander. Yeah, that's a good one. Love it, man. Am I Mac or PC based for my recording? I am Mac based completely, all of it. However, it doesn't matter. At the end of it, and I'm Mac based and Logic based. I have Pro Tools. I know some Cubase. I've used Digital Performer. I'd say Pro Tools is the one I use second most because it gets obviously used. It's probably the industry standard if you want to call it that. But at the end of the day, even that doesn't matter. I like Logic because I'm used to it. I do like the sound of it. I do like the routing and how it handles automation and things better than Pro Tools. But at the end of the day, it's just a digital tape machine. That's all it is. So it doesn't really matter. And the same with the Mac and PC. We could go back and forth on that argument all day. And there may have been a time 10 years ago where I would argue Mac is better. But really, I know people that have built some bulletproof PCs. And I know if you guys are really inclined, you want to build one of your own, you can build one hell of a PC for a fraction of the cost. For me, I don't want to do that. I want to set it up and I want it to work and I want to be familiar with it. All our laptops, actually everything, our main machine, both our laptops, one is our live rig and one is my kind of main laptop computer, and our computer, our Mac Mini that runs all the video stuff, everything is now on the same operating system, so everything talks to each other well. But honestly, man, use what you're familiar with and use what you can afford. The best stuff, honestly, is what you have. If you have a PC, use it. It's the best. If you have a Mac, use it. It's the best. It doesn't matter. What else? Thoughts about tape plugins or using... Never used a clasp yet. Who asked this? TKM 4189. Are you at your post? Haven't used the clasp yet. Everything I've read about it seems to be really cool. One of these days I'm going to get my hands on one, or I know a couple studios here in town that I think I'm going to have to just go check it out. Using tape plugins, saturation plugins, I do use them actually sometimes, especially mixing. If I'm not going full analog, I may end up using some tape plugins. The Kramer tape I use sometimes, I know my partner Ernesto really likes that one. I use one a lot from Nomad called, crap, I can't remember what it's called. It's like the tape warmer or something like that. And I just put the tape on, and it's got a slider for bright and warm for the tape side of things. And that's what I use, and I really like what it does. You know, if I'm recording, I'm running through as much analog gear going in as I can, and I do the same thing on the way back out because digital is just, it's giving you one thing in and one thing out. Just what you're putting in, you're getting. You know, what's coming back out, you're getting. It's not coloring like a tape machine would, right? So if I'm in that point and maybe I'm only using, say, I did some mixes recently for this guitar player who's doing some like acoustic stuff, and it's really neat. But it's only a few tracks, so I'm not busting it out. I'm actually just bringing it out on a stereo track, and I'm using a little bit of that Nomad tape warmer, and then I'm running it through my Tone Lux and CL1 for a little extra sound. C1 for a little bit extra sound. But I actually think that the tape stuff used, if you use it too much, I think that stuff starts to, it's saturation that starts to sound fake, and it all builds up. It makes your mid-range and your low mids be kind of just dense. And if you have it on a ton of stuff, you just get a lot of density that you don't necessarily need. So maybe use it sparingly, but don't be afraid to use it. Jonathan, you seem to like the Audio-Technica mics, Cascade stuff. What's left in your mic cabinet? Don't have any Rhodes. Actually going to be getting some Neumann stuff in the new year. There's some things I'm looking at. Yeah, I love Audio-Technica. I've worked with them for a long time. I'm not an artist. I've created a lot of video content for them. We've done a lot of how-to videos, and they're a great company. Everybody is just super cool there, and they make awesome mics, so I use them. I love them. The Cascade, the same thing. The Studio Project, yeah, you kind of mentioned them all there. I've got the Heils that I like. I do have some AKG, like the 451B that I like. Although most of the time it's a little too bright for me, but it is a great mic. The Rode, haven't used too much of that stuff yet either, but you know what? We're going to. Another mic, some mics I've used are the, oh man, I can see it in my head. I'm going to have to think. Now that I was going to say it, I forgot. Going to look into some of the blue mics have been interesting me, or getting me interested lately. So I'm going to actually have to look into that stuff. Yeah, we're going to be bringing out some new stuff because I want to kind of keep things fresh for you guys. Jonas, new to Logic Pro. Man, I love the Logic. You know what? Ernesto and I, my partner Ernesto is actually full-on Logic certified. If I have a problem with Logic, and I know the program really well, but if I have a problem, I call him. We're going to do some Logic Pro things soon. We may even do some Logic Pro to Pro Tools comparisons, or just ways to work between the two, because that seems to happen quite a bit. Mark, do they have a talent? Mark, if we could design a talent plug-in, we'd be rich. We'd have it. We should talk. We got to figure that out. Although I don't think we're going to have much luck. That's the hardest thing, man, is just getting people to practice their craft. Just like you guys are all practicing, you know, your recording stuff. We need everybody on an instrument to do the same thing, man. We can't fix a bad performance. I'm sorry. You can fix a lot of things, but it's shit in, it's shit out. There's just, can't polish a turd. Sven used the 4040s for overheads. Great overhead microphone. Yeah, I like them for room mics too. The 4040 is basically the cardioid version of the 4050. And it's fantastic. For me, for my rooms, I like, if you want to, oh man, who asked that question earlier? Jonas, was that you? Possibly, about the clean and gritty sound. One thing I would do if I want something gritty is I go to ribbon mics and I start pushing EQ into them and finding where they kind of break up a little bit. Because you can get away with pushing EQ on a ribbon where you can't on a condenser. And they're beefy and full. And that's one thing that sometimes when things are clean, it's because we hear things being open a lot. But a ribbon, you can get in that mid-range and really start driving kind of some not so nice frequencies to make things gritty or dirty, where if you do that on a condenser, things can get harsh or pretty nasty in a not so good way, like a hard, not so nice listenable way, really fast. But for rooms, man, I may stick some ribbons, or like I said, I like that MXL Cube. I have 6 of them because they are dirty. They can be really dirty sounding. Usually I'll bump some 10K out of it, maybe 6 to 8 dB, because cymbals tend to be a little weird with that mic there, no matter where it is, and even on a guitar. But once I do that, and I do that right away, and then I forget about it, and then there's my mic, and then after that I'll go on to EQing as that's my sound. And you can get some really cool, gritty sounds with that mic too. And that's a cheap mic, man. It's really cheap. But maybe overhead's a gritty thing. Try some 57s. I've done it with the PR30 before, which is really cool. What else have I used? You know, I did this. I can't say anything yet because Barry Rudolph's going to be putting out a review on it, but there's a new ribbon. This thing was huge, weighed 7.5 pounds. I mean, it was like the studio workout mic. But we moved that around on drums because he's writing a review for Mix. When he puts that out, look at that. This mic sounded fantastic, and the ribbon mic that had a great mid-range to it. Oh, what else we have here? What time is it? 7:17. Holy crap, we've been going an hour, and I still haven't refilled my coffee. Well, you guys, listen, I'm going to get back to doing some video, and I have a little bit of mixing to do here. But again, I want to say thank you. I will be out next week because I'm going to go home and see the family for a week. But I want to say thank you for joining us. We have great stuff coming up in the new year. Please go to recordingninjaworkshops.com. There's a form on the bottom where I want feedback. I'm going to take screenshots of all of this stuff, these questions you guys asked, so we can put them into the queue of some of these broadcasts, and we could be more detailed about them than me just sitting here talking. But if I miss some of these, please go let me know. Also, we have the Mastering Overhead series out. We have a cool 2-pack with the Art of Recording Drums, the minimal miking, and the Mastering Overheads together. You save 10% on that stuff. Going to be working on a kick drum one coming out really soon. Going to be hopefully putting that together in January. Oh, wait, hold on. See, one more question. Interface. I have a Motu. Our rig here in the studio is PCI based. We're not USB and not Thunderbolt. It's off the Motu PCI 424 card. We have a pair of Motu 24 IOs, which is 24 ins and outs each. And then we have, I have two 2408s that I have as another 16 in and outs there, plus all the digital stuff on that one. That's mostly used for outputs going to my headphone system, and then extra 16 outs during mixing, 16 outs during mixing if I need it. And I use those inputs also sometimes for, running track back into it or whatever. Mark, PreSonus gear for me. Man, I've used PreSonus stuff. I have no gripes with it, man. I've used that stuff for years. It's great. I tend to lean towards the Motu just because it's really clean. The noise floor is low and it's just built solid. But man, we actually have an old PreSonus Digimax in our live rig, and it's fantastic, man. Yeah, not a big USB guy on that. I still haven't bought into that yet, but it's getting better. It's only going to get better as these companies make their own drivers and we move into more of a Thunderbolt world. So, but anyway, guys, thanks again, man. Hope you all have a happy holiday wherever you are in the world, whether you're down in hot Australia or you're here in LA or you're in some other cold part of the world. If you're in a cold part, I'm jealous, man. I want some snow. But thank you guys for tuning in and joining me, and we'll see you in the new year, man. Woohoo! Now I'm my only guy, so I got to turn all this stuff off myself.